Hey guys, numbers are in for Aqua in Panama City Beach for May of 2020. I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. There's a lot going on in the condo market and real estate market in general. So this is probably a little bit longer update than normal, but want to show you guys a few things. So first of all, if you haven't been watching any of the coronavirus market updates that I've been doing since the beginning of March, let me just refresh you on this. Showing time, what you're looking at here is a graph from a company called Showing Time. Showing Time is a program that real estate agents and brokers use to help schedule showing appointments. So if a buyer wants to go out and look at 5 or 6 different condos, instead of making 5 or 6 different phone calls, it's a centralized system that a lot of people use. So it's a good way for us to get some sense of how many people are going out and actually looking at real estate. Early on in the pandemic, I was really keyed in on this almost every day because we knew early March that fewer and fewer people were going to get out and look at real estate. The big question was then, when are we going to see people starting to go back out and look at real estate again? Because that leads to contracts, which leads to closings. So if we're trying to get some sense of the market, we have to start not at how many closings we're having. We have to back up in the process and look at how many contracts are being written and what happens. How do we know that? We look earlier than that in the process and look and see how many people are looking at real estate. So since early April, and what you're looking at here is from the state of Florida, since early April, things have really come back in real estate. A lot of people are out looking at real estate, a lot of contracts being written. So, where we are today is just about flat when you compare year over year with where we were last year, which was a very good year in real estate. So, once we started tracking that, we also wanted to look at the number of new contracts that were being written, because we knew same thing early on. If we're comparing year over year, we knew early on we're going to start to go down. And so we started out pretty healthy and moved down late March, early April. But as that same curve started to move up, not surprising, we started to see more and more new contracts written. If you focus on the Panama City Beach condos market, you see that right about when Florida started moving up, that we started to see more activity in the condo market. We were at our worst, we were about 79% off in any given week on year over year in writing contracts. So think about what that means. 79% less business was written this week of April than it was the year before. Now we started getting a little better. And as of last week, we finally got into the positive, and we're actually up 2% when compared to the previous year. So even though we're not completely out of the woods, so to speak, in coronavirus and all that, we're actually up in condo sales and writing new contracts as of last week, just a little bit, but it's an encouraging thing. So if we get into Aqua specifically, let's look at what's going on in there. I haven't used this chart in a while, but you guys know, if you've seen these, this is a really good one to understand a few things. So remember, the red line represents the number of units that are for sale. What we're looking at here is the entire Panama City Beach condo market, but just the newer projects, because the newer projects and the older projects are two different markets if you really get into the condo markets. So the red line represents the number of units that are for sale at any given point. The black line represents the number of closings. So like we talked about, even pre-coronavirus, starting middle 2018, we started adding units for sale almost month over month. More and more units for sale, more and more units for sale. And like we've talked about, though, the market was scalding hot in 2018. Remember our months of inventory number, for the refresher for you guys who haven't seen this in a while, 5 or 6 months of inventory traditionally represented a neutral market. If you were less than that, that means things were selling faster, that there's more demand. That means the longer you stay in that territory, that's when you start to hear about multiple offers and units selling very quickly, those kind of things. And so we were in a scalding hot market back in 2018. Below 2 months of inventory is a very, very low number. And you can see as that red line moved up little by little, which real estate generally tends to do. It doesn't move quickly. It moves little by little. So we've continually slowed down over the last couple of years. But we've slowed down, remember, from a scorching hot market to still a pretty strong condo market. Even as recent as January of this year, we were still under 3 months of inventory. That's a strong market. That's low inventory. Buyers don't have a lot of choices, so they feel obligated to make strong offers. Very much a seller's market. March, February, we didn't have any real effects of coronavirus coming in yet, because remember, these numbers are tracking closings, and that means contracts written in January-ish. So we started to slow down to about a neutral market February and March. And of course, April, that numbers jumped up quite a bit because March was right in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic. Not a lot of showings. So as you would expect, not a lot of contracts. So in April, not a lot of closings. So we've jumped up to a stalled buyer's market. May was incrementally better, but not a lot. The vacation rental ban in Florida had, I think, plenty to do with this. Not only coronavirus and people not being able to get out, but the vacation rental ban, of course, had a big effect, since so many of the buyers for condos come from somewhere else. So for me, it's not terribly surprising that May got a little better, but not a lot better. We're seeing residential do very, very well. We're seeing the 30A market on fire. So it'll be interesting to see the June closing numbers for condos. I expect it to improve. I don't know if it will improve enough to get back to even neutral market territory. Let's look at Aqua and show you some sales, and I'll give you a couple ideas at the end here. Aqua specifically, remember, anytime we're looking at one individual building, this chart's going to bounce around a lot because there's just not a lot of data when you compare it to hundreds of units. So again, the red line in Aqua is the number of units for sale. Actually, the number of units for sale in Aqua has declined over that same period where we've been adding a lot of units across the beach. So for the most part, Aqua's jumped around until early this year. Aqua Cana has jumped around neutral market territory. You know, here's neutral, got a little above it in 1 month, a little below it in 1 month. It's always going to swing, have more volatility with fewer numbers. April and May, again, you know, after being 2 of these 3 months here, we're at very strong numbers with a lot of sales. You know, 4 sales in this month, 1 sale in February, 2 sales actually in April. But we're adding units for sale here. So the market's slowed down a little bit in Aqua too, but Aqua's not really doing, is 50% better than the rest of the condo market. Sorry, I'm outside on the home office. You know, if the overall market's at 14 months of inventory, 12 months of inventory, Aqua in May was only at about 7, which in April was really only at 3.5. You know, there were actually 2 closings in Aqua. We went through those last month. So we only had 1 closing in May. Unit 307 closed for maneuvers. Oh, very cool. Unit 307 closed for 437,500. That's the only closing that we had in May. A couple things to think about. I know that's a lot, and I threw a lot of data at you, but let me talk about where we may be going forward. If you take coronavirus out of it for a second, the condo market's already been slowing down quite a bit, again, from a scorching hot market to about neutral market territory. I think if you look at where the overall economy was pre-pandemic, there was a lot of optimism and confidence, but probably more, a little more, people were holding their breath a little more about the economy than maybe a year or 2 ago when everything was just wide open. So throw the coronavirus pandemic into everything. And of course, it stalled everything for a good 45, 60 days in the condo market. So back to this chart here, and the one that's probably concerning me the most, or is the most interesting. If see this jump here of we added a lot of units in March and April to the market. And of course, that's just because we didn't sell a lot during that period of time. We probably people were thinking about selling at about the same rate or the same pace as we had been kind of clipping along. But in 1 month of not selling anything, those units sat out there. June and July are typically very difficult months to sell condos. We certainly write contracts. But with June and July, especially being so busy with so many units being rented, it's difficult for a buyer to get in and evaluate anything and write a contract. So there's a lot of research going on generally in June and July. Not as many contracts written. So there's the potential here for even more units to be added with not a lot of contracts written. And come right at the end of the season, I'm wondering what we're going to look like if we have a lot of this inventory, a lot of condos for sale on the back end of the season. September and October are very, very good months for condo sales generally. The buyers that have been wanting to buy, it's almost a pent-up demand issue. The buyers that have been wanting to buy in June, July, a little bit of August that couldn't get in and look at units now can plan a trip into town and look at units, or at least have their agent walk through and video for them. So it is a good time for some sales. September and October. It'll be curious to see if we can absorb, if we write as many contracts then as some of this supply that's getting added. Something to think about, and I say this every year in condo sales since I started in 2003. I probably didn't learn it for a couple of years, but it's very common when someone's ready to sell a condo, especially one that has been a vacation rental, to get to the end of revenue season and then right around Labor Day start calling real estate agents, hey, I'm thinking about selling my condo. So what you normally see is a little bit of a spike, more units come up for sale a little bit towards the end of the season. Buyers, especially experienced condo buyers, are very well aware of that and sort of plan on that. If you're thinking about selling in 2020, there's a few things to think about. That's a very general trend no matter what's happening in the market in the world. So if you're going to sell something, you're going to probably have more competition in September, October than you might in July, August, just because of this mindset of I'll wait till the end of rental season. It's a good idea, just because it takes a little time. For a good agent is going to get professional photography and build websites and get marketing going, and that doesn't happen overnight. A good agent is gonna prepare all those things, and it's not a bad idea to start having those conversations in June, even early July, and rolling something out for sale around the 4th of July is a great time to put something out for sale. Anytime in July, you're getting ahead of all this rush of units for sale to the market. It's very likely that even if you got a contract in the first week or two on the market, that it's probably a 30-day closing-ish. Occasionally a cash deal can close quicker, a week or two. So think about it. If you're putting the unit on the market for sale in early July, even if you got a contract in the first week or two, you're now not closing until into August. And so now if the worry is, hey, I want to maximize my revenue through rental season, you're going to do that it's very likely that you're going to go ahead and get most of your rental income in and capitalize on the fact that all these units haven't come for sale yet and that people are still excited about the beach. The weather is still good. Throw one little nugget in there for you. If you're concerned about the economy, third quarter, potentially fourth quarter, if you're concerned about what might happen with flare-ups in coronavirus pandemic, volatility around a presidential election, any of those kinds of things that move markets, then this idea, I think, is even more important in 2020 than it has been in previous years. So if selling in 2020 is a goal and getting through rental season is part of that goal, think about starting the process a little earlier than your instincts. Again, it's real likely that you'll get through most of rental season, even if you put a unit up for sale end of June, early July. So I know that was a lot, guys. I hope it's helpful. There's a lot. Real estate has really moved very quickly in the last 60 days, where normally it doesn't move this fast. I expect it to settle in, but take some of that into your considering, or for your consideration if you're thinking about selling anytime in the near future. Hope you guys, hope this helps. Be well. We'll talk to you next month.